Aye, mateys, remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock podcast. Proceed at your own risk, and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, and music, as well as what's streaming, what's playing in theaters, and what's happening in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars fan. You can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. I'm broadcasting from a wonderful New York this week. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on our very own Skull Rock YouTube channel. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon, how are you? Are you thawing out?
We're thawed out, Dave. We actually got the whole clan into the SUV and made a run for Costco. We did our little Valentine's Day good time dinner, and we had a good time, Dave. With the kids were dropped off for pizza, and we had dinner at P.F. Chang's.
Very nice. Very nice.
How about you guys? You guys doing okay?
Yeah. You know, we got up to New York City on Friday, and we're spending the long weekend here. I got a chance to catch up with some friends. I posted some pictures on my Facebook page.
Good.
And it feels like springtime, Aljon. It's in the 40s here.
Well, I'll take it. I'll take it over the snow and ice any day of the week.
I know. Hey, listen, we got a great show this week. We've got part one of an interview with Rob Pratt, who's an animator and storyboard artist. And I think what's really interesting about this interview, Aljon, is that Rob is going to be talking about how he's made his own projects. He's gone off and done things on his own that has acted as a calling card and gotten him more work. This is something, you know, because the animation environment's rather tough out there right now for a lot of people. You're going to want to listen to this interview with Rob. We got 4 parts to it. It's inspirational. And, you know, he's somebody who he's making his own way. He's making projects for himself. And those projects are gaining traction and getting him more work. So it's something that I think is just not only inspirational, but it's just a great example of making your own way.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to hearing from Rob as he is definitely making his way. And, animators and artists, listen to the show and hopefully you can gain some knowledge as well as some inspiration for that as well. Well, Dave, we have once again, a chock-packed show. But I think first we're going to empty out this mailbag.
Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
It's always nice to hear from our listeners, Dave. And this week we've got another doozy.
You know, we got a great email, and I love getting these kinds of emails, folks. Thank you. You know, just thanks for sending stuff to us. But, you know, if you feel like it, send us a note. We appreciate it. This one says, "Hey, Dave, been meaning to write again for a while to say how the show keeps getting better and better with the long form interviews. I've been enjoying the interviews with Ed Nowak so far. I've heard the first 3 and will be doing part 4 soon. I've been working in the legal industry for a while, including at a couple of studios, and closely follow different lawsuits that crop up. Hearing about Ed's stories has been fascinating, and I truly appreciate the in-depth discussions about his career and different cases during his tenure at the studio. It has really humanized the department to realize there are actually hardworking attorneys involved and not just a faceless behemoth." Well, you know, that's absolutely true. And Aljon, as I've always said, we don't do boring here, right? You know, I mean, and even Ed was a little bit, He wasn't sure if he wanted to do these. He thought he didn't think it was interesting. Of course it was interesting. We're getting notes from our readers telling us how much they were interested in this. And there were some great stories, and he's had a great career path. So I'm glad we were able to do the interview with Ed. So Scott goes on to say, on another note, I want to refer you to the great book I just finished, After Disney by Neil O'Brien, which is a terrific book, by the way. It essentially covers the Ron Miller years, which I'm fascinated by since there is so little written about it, and goes incredibly in depth about your first production, The Black Cauldron, and the whole era from Walt's death to Eisner and Katzenberg starting. It's a great companion to Steve Anderson's book. Steve Anderson did the book Disney In Between, The Lost Years, 1966 to 1986, which is fantastic read as well. Steve Anderson's book, and very detailed and compelling with lots of stories about many past guests of the show who were there. One of the best Disney books I've read. So that's great to hear. And then he wraps it up by saying, keep up the great work, Scott from Los Angeles. And he signed his last name, but we don't like to use people's last names. We want to protect them, But Scott from Los Angeles did a great job. He said, P.S. last year I told you how I was trying to have at least one Christmas ornament for every Disney and Pixar animated film, and finally got one for the Black Cauldron. Wow, that was a find, I have to say.
Wow.
He only needs Dinosaur, Home on the Range, and Meet the Robinsons, and Strange World. Good luck with Strange World, unless there's a warehouse full of them someplace.
Wow, good luck. You know what? Yeah, I'm like him. I collect Disney Christmas ornaments as well, and we have a whole bunch of those.
I know. I think it's awesome. So again, Scott, thanks for writing to us and telling us how much you enjoy our show and how much you enjoyed the Ed Nowak interviews. And those of you listening, if you haven't listened to the Ed Nowak interviews, you're going to absolutely enjoy them. There's some hilarious stories in there. So check that out. So that was it, Aljon. We always get notes on social media, and there's so many of them because we did the Roger Allers tribute last week. So, we just got lots of heartfelt notes about Roger, not only on LinkedIn, not only on Facebook, but on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we encourage everybody to go back and listen to our show archives on our website, as well as send us those emails. We'd love to get the feedback, even if it's on a classic episode. We would appreciate that. And it's crazy for me to say classic episode, Dave, since we've been doing this now for 5 years?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we have I think we're almost at 280. There's over 280 episodes.
I can't believe it.
It's crazy.
I have to pinch myself. Well, anyway, gang, we look forward to hearing from you, and maybe your email will be read in an upcoming episode.
Pam, she wrote this great review of my poetry book.
That's my pick.
I read a great review.
Your girlfriend got a great review.
Oh, that's my pick, too. Sorry.
Excuse me while I start the projector.
Skull Rock Podcast, Picks of the Week. So we're in the projector. Let's talk about our picks of the week. Dave, what have you been watching this week?
Well, I actually got a chance to go out to the movies this week, and I saw a film called Shelter. Have you heard about this movie?
I have.
Shelter. It's a Jason Statham film.
Yes.
Look, I'll go see anything that Jason Statham is in. I really will. And this delivers. It's a little slow at the beginning, but it picks up speed very quickly, and it's a great action picture. There's a high body count. Look, Rotten Tomatoes only gives it 63%. IMDb gives it 6.5 out of 10. Fandango gives it 87%. I will tell you that I just enjoyed this movie because I enjoy Jason Statham, who's a great action star, So the synopsis of the film is: on a remote coastal island, a former assassin living in self-imposed exile rescues a young girl from a deadly storm. As their lives start to intertwine, he must protect the orphan while battling enemies from his past. So this is all MI6, his past life coming back to haunt him, kind of thing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I saw it in the theater. It was terrific. Another movie I saw, but I watched this one on Peacock. It's Nobody 2 with Bob Odenkirk, who's just absolutely terrific. It also has Sharon Stone in it, Christopher Lloyd, Colin Hanks. I missed this one in the theaters, Aljon. It's a sequel to a film called Nobody, and I love Bob Odenkirk. He's fantastic,
Yes.
He plays workaholic assassin Hutch Mansell, takes his family on a much-needed vacation to a small tourist town of Plummerville. However, he soon finds himself in the crosshairs of a corrupt theme park operator, a shady sheriff, and a bloodthirsty crime boss. It was fabulous. High body count, my friends. IMDb gives it 6.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 76%. 81% of people who watched this liked it, and I think they liked it because Bob Odenkirk is such a likable actor.
Yes, certainly. I love the fact that you've incorporated the body count into your review. I love that. It's a new thing. I love that.
It's fabulous. Now, on the small screen, I did watch, and I binge watched this, by the way, season 4 of The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix.
Yes.
And if you haven't watched it, I've talked about it over the years. The idealistic lawyer, Mickey Holler, runs his practice out of the back of his Lincoln Town Car, taking on cases big and small across Los Angeles. If you watch season 3, you'll see that he gets arrested for murder. That's how season 3 left the cliffhanger. And so season 4 deals with all of that fallout. Absolutely fantastic show. Manuel Garcia Ruffo. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm sorry.
All right.
Neve Campbell, Becky Newton, Angus Sampson, Jazz Raycole. It's terrific. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 92%, IMDb 7.8 out of 10, and 86% of people who watched it like it. I give it 2 thumbs up, Aljon. I think The Lincoln Lawyer's a terrific show, although I will give you this disclaimer. If you're a lawyer, like my friend Rick or my friend Ed, you'll sit there and punch holes in a lot of the stuff that's going on, okay? So all I would say is if you're a lawyer, you may roll your eyes. But everyone else, you'll enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. And then finally, a new show dropped on Netflix called How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. Now, this is from the creator of the Derry Girls. Did you ever see the Derry Girls, Aljon?
No, I've heard of it, but I've not seen
Derry
it.
Girls was a hysterically funny show that takes place in Belfast, and it was created by Lisa McGee. Well, Lisa McGee, she created this show, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast, and it's an 8-episode. I'm not sure if this is a limited series or not, but it's an 8-episode new series that's dropped. I'm hoping that they do a second part to it. I've only watched the first couple of episodes. Brilliant writing. It's funny. It's a mystery. 3 lifelong friends reunite after the death of an old classmate turns a wake into a dark mystery. They embark on a thrilling adventure across Ireland, piecing together enigmatic truths and complicated lives. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 91%, IMDb 7.2 out of 10. 94% of people who watch the show like it, and I really like it. Sinead Keenan is in it, Emmett Scanlon, a lot of familiar people you might see if you've watched British television or Irish television shows. It's really I think the first 2 episodes hit it right out of the park. It's a fabulous show, and I can't wait to see the rest of the episodes. That is all that I've been watching, Aljon. What have you been watching?
Well, I've been watching a few things, but not necessarily on any streaming platform or in the theater this week. I've actually been intrigued by a brand new series of interviews on YouTube called In Depth with Graham Bessinger. Have you seen his interviews before?
No, I haven't, but I know that he interviewed Michael Eisner, and I saw a few clips of that.
Okay. It's a wonderful sit down interview. And I am fascinated, absolutely fascinated. I'm telling everybody and my friends about this interview in multi parts. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. Several of the titles of the interviews are Michael Eisner micromanaged 3 areas of Disney. And of course, this is his time as CEO, or his commentary on Bob Iger and Disney's future, as well as why haven't I stepped inside Disney headquarters since 2005? So those are just some of the things, but I will say that it's caused a little bit of a stir because he had mentioned that Disney has become maybe too expensive for families going to the parks and things of that
Right.
nature.
I read about this, and obviously he was one of the CEOs that started that.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, because that was an easy way for, during each of the CEOs that have been there, since Michael took over, it was an easy revenue boost. You boost the tickets a few dollars and you got a whole bunch of money and you were constantly making your quarterly numbers.
Well, this is true.
Yeah.
I think that is part of that discussion, and I think the other part of it is he definitely led that expansion of the Disney brand during the 90s.
Absolutely.
And
But you
you
but
know,
but
the
but you know what? The truth is, Aljon, our grandmothers could have reawakened Disney. You know what I'm
right,
saying? In other words,
right.
I don't want to diminish his contribution, but there was really just bringing in a fresh pair of eyes and say, well, let's do this and let's do that and let's do this. You were reawakening, a great giant that was asleep for a while. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah, absolutely. Another portion of the interview, there's a couple different noteworthy things about it, about Eisner and his toughest battle with Disney. And a lot of it has to do with what happened with Harvey Weinstein.
oh yeah.
So he's very vocal about that. And quote, he said he lied about everything, unquote. So there's definitely some stuff he steps into there that we as Disney fans, and I've been absolutely fascinated by his tenure as CEO, that we gain a lot of knowledge about in this interview. And then there's another one too about how Spielberg and Lucas convinced him to buy Indiana Jones. Those are just some of the headlines here, but it's fascinating when you delve into it. Multi parts, fascinating interview, very easy to watch as well. I thought interview was well done, so give it a look up in YouTube for the interviews with Graham.
The one
Very
one
cool.
thing I will say, Aljon, is I'm glad that he's finally sitting down and talking about some of these tough questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
I'm
know?
I am glad he is as
Yeah.
well. And it is one of those things where he vowed that he wouldn't speak about the Disney company until Bob Iger retired, being his successor. So I'm glad that the words are
Well,
finally coming
yeah,
out.
there's enough distance now that I think it's legit for him to, come out. Although I have to say, he raised a lot of eyebrows a little while ago when, he criticized some things that were going on.
For sure.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I
and
didn't think that that was really a great thing to do necessarily. You know what I mean?
yes. Yeah, there were some things I think looking back that maybe he stepped in. But at least now we can get that interview out there and get his words out there to clarify things. So that is good. The other thing I was able to check out this week is a brand new album, and I say it's new. It's new. It's not necessarily new, but it was released late last year. It's Sammy Hagar and the Best of All Worlds band, The Residents. And I am a huge Sammy Hagar fan. Loved Sammy Hagar by himself or with Montrose. Dave, I don't know if you're the big classic rocker like I am, but I was really big into Sammy Hagar growing up with his tenure with Van Halen and as a solo artist himself. And now the Red Rocker is almost 80 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
He has been doing great, doing a residency in Las Vegas. He just is fresh off the heels of last year's Best of All Worlds tour, where he was able to take him and former Van Halen bassist Michael Anthony, the other half of Van Halen, if you will, and then play with Joe Satriani and do these songs from all eras of Van Halen. And I'm such a big Van Halen fan that I wanted to see them live. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a chance to see him. And I've seen Sammy Hagar many times, and I really appreciate the fact that they're able to play all the eras of Van Halen, but because Joe Satriani is who he is. And he has a particular guitar sound and tone. No one's going to be able to get in to the role of Eddie Van Halen and replace Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
The tone is different. The way he attacks a song is different, but I sat and listened to it with delight because I haven't heard these songs played live in a long, long time. And I can appreciate Joe Satriani's take on the classic Van Halen songs, the way he approaches it, and the way he has his own flourishes where it is specifically him paying homage. And I think when you go in with the mentality of seeing a band that has replacement members, that it captures a spirit, but these other people are artists of themselves and are interpolating that music in their own way. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think some people think, well, they just want to get a carbon copy experience and have Eddie out there or have some kind of sound alike play exactly like him. And albeit I can understand that, but I also appreciate the artistry behind covering the songs in their own way. So if you're really, really down with it and wanted to hear the band in its current incarnation, check out Sammy Hagar's Best of All Worlds live residency. The album's out. I believe there's also a live video of it as well, but it's worth checking out, especially for diehard Sammy Hagar and Van Halen fans. Please check that out.
And by the way, he's 78.
He's 78. That's it. Thank you for looking that up. I appreciate that. I knew he was pushing 80. But I tell you, I want to grow up and be like him, Dave. I told myself, and I told this to my wife, and she understands. If I wanted to grow up, and I'm saying this as a 51-year-old man, but when I grow up, I have two idols I look at, Sammy Hagar being one and Jimmy Buffett being number two. I want to be the hardest working man in rock and roll and have all of that merchandise.
Well, and you want to know something, Aljon? The reason why those guys, like you look at Mick Jagger, who's in his 80s, those guys are constantly moving. They're going out on stage. They're running around the stage. They're belting out these songs. They're just out there moving their bodies around, constantly. And that's what's keeping them young,
Absolutely. Well, and I told my wife this too. This year, I've really made a turn, I think, and promised myself I'm going to play more guitar. And I love playing guitar standing up. And when I perform, I'm all around the stage. I am so energetic when it comes to stage. I think some people are like, man, Aljon, you just move like, just like you've been playing guitar, when you were 30 or when you were, late 20s or whatever. And I said, yeah, that's because my body and my mind still think I'm that, but I'm no longer that. But I love to move on stage and give people a show. And it helps keep me young, Dave. And I think you've just nailed the fountain of youth. It's movement. It's being engaged, finding a passion, and just going out there.
And also having a positive attitude. I mean, you really have to have a positive attitude. You got to be looking forward to things coming down the road to you. You got to be making plans. You got to be constantly doing things. I mean, it's I don't sit still. I'm out there doing stuff all the time.
Yeah. And that's the secret there between that and your personal retreat,
There you go.
That's something that'll keep you young. Well, Dave, that is great. That is what we've been checking out this week. Feel free to send us your stuff. We would love to review in a future episode.
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
Send help, Dave. Send help. It is number one at the box office, and it's continuing its strong run with a total domestically of 38 million, followed by Kevin James in Solo Mio. I don't know if you saw him during the Super Bowl, Dave, but James was sitting by himself in his tuxedo with a bouquet of flowers, looking all sad. And people were wondering, why is Kevin James sitting by himself and people are surrounding him and patting him on the shoulders like, you okay, man? You okay? And it's like, it's for the movie, people. Some of the best viral marketing ever. Solo Mio with Kevin James posted a solid debut, quickly climbed past $9 million in its first 6 days at the box office. And then titles like Iron Lung, Stray Kids, The Dominate Experience, and Dracula rounded up the top performers. And, February has become a pretty good month. Of course, globally, Stray Kids, The Dominate Experience surged to a near $20 million globally. Zootopia 2 continues its massive worldwide run, roaring past $1.8 billion. And The Housemaid crossed in the $300 $50 million mark. And it's also available on Amazon, so you can stream it while it's in theaters. I think that's a brilliant move on their part to capitalize on all the media that it's doing, to have it both, show up in the theaters first and then several weeks later show up on streaming to kind of capitalize on the marketing for that particular movie, because, it's not a very high budget type of movie. So, I'm glad that's a strategy working for him, Dave. What do you say about the box office
No,
this week?
listen, I think, February used to be that month where they would dump a lot of bad movies, just to get them out. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's a lot of great movies that are coming out into the theaters.
Absolutely. I think they're trying to put some really good heat behind some of them to kind of light up the box office on a monthly basis. So hopefully that trend will continue as we move into the spring and into the box office, the big blockbuster box office situation. The time is coming, Dave. The time is
Yeah,
coming.
yeah.
Disney Plus announces a new release, Robo Go-Go Season 2. The press release happened to land on my desk this week, highlighted by the return of Robo Go-Go Season 2 with titles like Armosaurs and Dead Girl Summer. The slate emphasizes family-friendly animation, including a bunch of new things for Disney Plus for the kiddos. So if you're into Robo Go-Go like my kids are, you'll appreciate that. Dave, an era I forgot to mention last week coming to an end. Dino Land USA is closing down. It's one of the Animal Kingdom's original 1988 lands being closed. It closed earlier this month, and it marks the end of a classic dinosaur attraction that I absolutely loved. And if you checked out social media, you'll see that they brought some of the cast members there to kind of send that dinosaur ride attraction and shut it down for good. I told my kids when because we're going to Walt Disney World during their spring break here in a couple
Yeah.
weeks. It's going to be a sad day. And they were like, we're not going to see Dinosaur anymore. That was their favorite ride, because they love dinos.
What are they putting in its place? Do you know?
So they are putting in Indiana Jones. So they're going to have their own Indiana Jones experience, and Dino Land will be taken over by Encanto. So they're doing a whole kind of animal. I mean, it makes sense that they would have it there because of, the child that speaks to all the animals, et
Sure,
cetera.
sure.
So they're doing that whole kind of like South American kind of vibe
Right.
there, which makes sense. And I look forward to that. I'm sure my kids are look forward to it because they love Encanto. But Dave, you have fond memories of being at that park during that time when Roy E. Disney was running
I
things.
do.
So
I mean, anytime I was down in Orlando with Roy, it was always a given that we would be spending some amount of time over at the Animal Kingdom. I love that park.
Yeah, I love it too, and got great memories. And it is kind of sad because I spent so much time there, and I was so glad I was able to take my children there several times to experience Dino Land. And they were very sad, Dave. They were like, "You mean to say that we'll never see Dinosaur again?" I said, "You'll see it in a different type of ride. It'll be back there, and you're going to love it just like you love Dinosaur."
Yeah, you just have to, if they're hungry for dinosaurs, you're just going to have to take them through Primeval World on the Disneyland Railroad at Disneyland.
That's exactly right. That's there. And we are going to work toward that, Dave.
There you
We're
go.
getting there. Of course, Epcot and Magic Kingdom are undergoing some major updates and refurbishments as Josh D'Amaro walks in as the now CEO of the company. There's Flower and Garden Festival happening right now, Festival of the Arts, and they're doing a bunch of different modernization during the parks, and I'm looking forward to checking them out. One of them, Dave, we did kind of mention, is that Frozen Ever After animatronics. They finally got the new animatronic heads in there instead of those the lamp lights that they
Projection heads.
projection
Yeah,
heads.
I think the projection heads, to me, because I was involved early on in the development of that for the Dwarf Mine Coaster.
That's right.
I think from a technology standpoint, it was great. And when it worked really well. The problem was that over time, the lamps changed in their luminosity, their intensity, and there was maintenance issues. And that's the big thing down at these parks is maintenance. You know, it's difficult for them to continually spend money on either replacing the Pico projectors or replacing bulbs or whatever, making adjustments so that it was flawless looking. Because when it was flawless looking, it really worked well, you know?
Those are the things I think that the public forgets when you look at the design and the architecture of these attractions, that on paper it looks great. And when you put it through its paces within its first month of opening or whatever, everything is all rosy. It's coming off exactly as the Imagineers had envisioned. However, in practicality, as you say, there are changes in bulbs and maintenance. And yes, the projection faces look more realistic or lifelike. They're more expressive because of the way it's animated. And then the people don't realize that it's a nightmare. You have closures and, parts get more expensive down the road, or it's difficult to have those things kind of align. You're trying to get those projectors aligned properly, or something gets out of whack or
Yeah,
whatever. Things
and then, what happens when one projector goes out in the head of one dwarf, then you've got no face showing, you've got essentially just a black screen, if you will, and then the other dwarves are working properly. So there were maintenance issues that I don't think that they could continue to spend the money on. Because all of those things, Aljon, we talk about when we had Ed Nowak on, we talked about all the lawsuits and things that go on behind the scenes that contribute to the cost of doing business. Maintenance at the park is huge. There's an army of people that go into those theme parks overnight to do maintenance, to do paint touch up, to change flower beds, to do all kinds of things so that when the guests come through the gate the next day, it's this pristine, beautiful experience that they're having. It doesn't look run down. And so they have to take into account how much maintenance is going into some of these attractions.
Absolutely. Well, I think the animatronics look amazing as they refurbish the ride. It looks great, and we're looking forward to seeing the rest of the upgrades that are going to be taking place in the park down the road.
Skull Rock Podcast.
You're like that little arrow on your hat, straight and shining, and that's the way I'll always remember you.
I'll always remember you. I'll always remember you.
I'll always remember you, Sharon.
They hang you, I'll always remember you.
In memoriam.
All right, Dave. And now we go to this week in celebrity passings. Very sad to hear and see actor James Van Der Beek passed away just a few days ago, February 11th, at the age of 48. Known for his roles in Dawson's Creek and Varsity Blues, some of my favorites as I went into my adulthood, and was widely recognized as a TV and film actor whose career has spanned decades. He died from stage 3 colorectal cancer. And it's very sad, Dave. Have you seen this?
Yeah, this was just absolutely sad. I mean, he'd been battling this for just over a year. Again, colorectal cancers are one of the leading cause of death among people under 50, right?
If I'm not mistaken, yes. It
is.
Well, why I went ahead and got my stuff checked out.
Yeah, and it's important for people to actually go to their doctors and to be checked periodically, because these things, if they're caught early, you can potentially survive it and be cured of it. But when it gets to stage 3 and stage 4, it's difficult. And I think that he went public with it and he talked about it, which I think is a great thing because it brings awareness. So
Absolutely. It's very sad. I've got fond memories of Dawson's Creek, one of my favorite TV shows as I was in college. We watched it all the time. And that kind of high school drama, coming of age story, if you will, lasted several seasons.
Yeah.
It was a really great show. Kevin Williamson, who was a writer director on that show, as well as Scream, had paid tribute to his friend, as well as Katie Holmes' co-star. Many of his castmates came out to honor the actor, and he was also in Dancing with the Stars as well. Did a really good job on Dancing with the Stars several seasons ago. It's very sad. He leaves behind a pretty large family.
Yeah,
So
wife and 6 children. They did a
yeah,
GoFundMe because, everybody thinks because he was a big star, he must be loaded with a lot of money. But, apparently he didn't really make any money off of Dawson's Creek. He didn't get residuals or anything off of that series. And that was sort of his break into the business. But they did a GoFundMe, and it started out with a goal of 500,000. It just kept moving up and up and up. Steven Spielberg donated $25,000. There were other people that donated 20,000. And then just tons of people donating 5, 10, 15, $20, $50, and I think it's up over 2.5 million now.
well, that's good. I mean, I wish everybody was able to, to have friends and people, help them out in the time of
Well,
need.
it's very expensive. When you're an actor, if you're not acting a certain number of hours a year, you lose your medical insurance. So, if you didn't have medical insurance or if you had to pay for private medical insurance that only covered a certain amount, you quickly wind up draining your savings when you have some kind of a devastating, health issue like this.
Yep, yep. Um, in other news, musician Andrew Rankin, longtime drummer for the Pogues, the Pogues, the Sunny
Absolutely. I
Side.
love the Pogues.
Yeah, died recently, February 10th, at the age of 72. Celebrated for his classic Celtic punk contributions and energetic performances. He died of, once again, Dave, your favorite, undisclosed
I don't,
causes.
I mean, tell us what it is, for crying out loud.
Well, I mean, at the age of 72, who
That's
knows? I
young.
mean, yes, that's young. The road can be a hard life. It can be a hard
Yeah.
life. Also, actor Bud Cort, known for his Harold and Maude and MASH and Brewster McCloud roles, died on the 11th. He was 77 from pneumonia. He has a distinctive performance of cult classic roles, lasting a mark on film history. Once again, one of those people that you may not know the name, but you know the face, especially when he was his younger self in those roles. Dave, I don't know if you have any memories
Yeah,
of acting.
Harold and Maude is just a cult classic film. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I'm sure you can find it on one of the streaming services. Even just as a rental, it's worth watching. It's a great film. And
Good
and of
stuff.
course the original MASH movie that kicked off the television series is absolutely fantastic with Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould in the lead roles. But Bud Cort played a character in that film, just really terrific.
The MASH movie is actually very underrated, and I think it's worth revisiting as well. Good stuff there. Rest in peace to all, and we will remember you. You've made a lasting mark in the world of entertainment. And speaking of entertaining, let's go to Rob Pratt now as he shares stories of animation and storyboard, his career, as well as some helpful hints for up and coming artists trying to find their way right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Hey, let's chat.
Let's chat afterwards. Let's chat. And he said, let's chat again.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we've got another great guest this week. We've got animator, story artist, director, Rob Pratt. Rob, welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great seeing you. It's been a while, huh?
Yeah, it has.
One of the things I always ask our guests when they come on for the first time, how'd you get started in this business, this crazy animation business we've all been involved with? How did you get involved in animation?
I think for any of us, it's a mixture of luck and then, wanting it so bad. I had, you've got good luck and bad luck in life. And the bad luck was I was raised in North Hollywood by a single mom, and she had, mental illness problems, and we were on welfare. But I was in North Hollywood, so I would ride my bike as a teenager, and I would see the Cartoonists Union. And just a few miles away in Burbank was the Walt Disney Studio, which was a big, giant bullseye for me. And I just loved cartoons from the beginning. As far as I can remember back, in Angelino, we were so lucky. Every Sunday morning, Tom Hatton had 3 hours of Popeye cartoons on KTLA, a local station.
Yeah.
And it was just heaven for a kid. 3 hours, and there was some mixed Jay Ward cartoons in there, like George of the Jungle and Tom Slick, but it was mostly the Popeyes, and I loved them. And I loved Looney Tunes. So right away, I knew I loved drawing. I loved Superman, but I knew that a comic book was just drawing and color, I guess. But animation was movement, performance. It was music, vocal performance, and I just knew all those mixtures. I had to be in that. So I just kind of, as a little kid, I was already in kindergarten saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be an animator at Disney. I just had a clear goal that I wanted, and I was in the right place for it. And then, luckily with, like I say, some luck is part of your career. When I was kind of hitting my early 20s, Disney had those huge hits of, Beauty and the Beast, outdone by Aladdin, outdone by Lion King. And so there was a huge hiring frenzy that happened for Pocahontas. And I was at the right age to looking for a job and wanting to be in animation. And that was my time.
Now, did you get any kind of training? Did you go to school or anything, or was it all self-taught?
It was because my situation with my mom, and we were very poor. But again, in North Hollywood, the Cartoonist Union was there. And so as I would ride my bike and I saw Cartoonist, what is that place? And I investigated it and found out you could take classes there, and you weren't accredited. You didn't get a degree of any type. But I started taking the classes, and then I'm learning from Bud Hester, who was a cleanup artist for Disney during, I think, the Sleeping Beauty era. And then my animation teacher was Ruben Aquino, who had animated Ursula the Sea Witch. And so you're not getting, again, I said like a degree or anything, but you're getting knowledge from the folks that do the work. And then you were getting little inside info like, oh, is Disney going to be hiring anytime soon? Well, we're working on a movie called Lion King, and, it's got a villain named Scar, so you can guess what's on his face. And, so we were getting little inside information about when maybe there was a possibility, as well as learning stuff.
Yeah, and I think our listeners would probably be interested in hearing this. You don't have to have a degree to make a living as an artist, right? It's really about your talent and how your talent is developed, right? Because we've all worked with folks who never really went to an art school.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, one person who comes to mind is Mike Gabriel.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Mike was on the show and talked about the fact that, he just, really worked at it himself. And he applied a number of times to Disney and got rejected. But every time he got rejected, he got notes from, Eric Larson and people like that who were saying, you need to improve on this, and you need to improve on that. And he went off and did it. So I just think it's inspiring to hear your story, and the fact that, you don't need a fancy degree. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree in animation or a PhD in animation. In fact, I knew somebody who had a PhD in animation, and they couldn't draw,
Right.
So.
Yes. It's definitely the bottom line. Can you do it? And you can if you're passionate and you love it. And talent, boy, how does one define talent? And some people definitely, it comes to them faster than others. And I've seen colleagues where it came faster to them than it did to me. So I always attribute it to like hard work and just loving it so much. And I just felt like I wanted it more than anybody. And even if I didn't get to go to the fanciest school or maybe have that head start of super talent like folks, nobody was going to work harder at it than me to get good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about you said, you're hungry, you really want it. You have to have that sort of fire in your belly, right?
Yeah, because it takes so much work. And even, watching those Popeye cartoons and then seeing these gorgeously animated, like Fruit Loops commercials. And, those are brilliantly done. I found out later, Eric Goldberg did a lot of those. You don't know how hard animation is until you sit down and try to do it, in the squash and stretch and all that. When you just watch it as a kid, it just seems like, oh, you just draw Toucan Sam and he's just going to be alive. And then when you get into it, you see how hard it is, and it takes dedication, and you're only going to be dedicated if you love it. It's going to weed out anyone who doesn't really love it.
Yeah, and it requires really understanding the principles of animation, how to perform. I mean, there's a lot of facets to doing great animation.
Yeah, so many. Yeah.
So you were taking classes at the local A39, the Screen Cartoonist Guild, which their offices are on North Hollywood. Well, they're in North Hollywood on Hollywood Way. Yeah, Hollywood Way. So
they were on Lankershim Boulevard when back when I was taking these classes.
Yeah.
And then I found out somewhere there's a story conference George Lucas had with Steven Spielberg for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it mentions that it was a building on Lankershim in North Hollywood, and I'm like, oh my God, was that how close was that to our building? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was just a kid when these the greatest movie ever made was being discussed.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we've all driven around the area and you go by these nondescript buildings and you find out later like some incredible thing was being done in that building.
Yeah.
So what happened? You were taking the classes. How did you get your first job, and what was your first job?
Yeah, so I'm taking those classes. I took a storyboarding class. I took a in-betweening class, and you make friends too. That's another thing. You go to school to network with people, and some friends might make an inroad to something and then kind of key you in on it. So a friend of mine had gotten some in-betweening work for some Don Bluth movies, and said, "Hey, I think I can get you some freelance on Thumbelina." And so I got that, and I got a little bit of work on Thumbelina, just a few scenes, and then now my confidence was up because Don Bluth, the work was very high caliber as well, being an offshoot from Disney. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to call Disney now. I've got a portfolio, and I put some of my Thumbelina in-betweens in there. And the person answered the line, and I said, hey, I'm interested in working for Disney. And they said, well, we need you to come down and take a test. And I said, oh, well, I've already done in-betweens for Don Bluth for Thumbelina. Well, we need to see that you're good enough for Disney. I was a kid and I was scared. I hung the phone up. I was so intimidated. And I did, I was so scared. And it took me several months to get the courage. Now I know I'm going to call Disney again. And if they say I need to take a test, I'm going to jump on it. And then that's when I got, I took the test for Pocahontas, and it was an all-day, I think it was like an 8-hour test to see how many in-betweens you could do. And
do you remember who you hung up on?
I don't. I wonder who it was. But it's funny. I did the test. 8 months passed, so I felt like, well, I didn't get it. And then I got the great call that changed my life. But had I taken that test the year earlier, I might have been on Lion King. I missed Lion because that's probably what was in production at that time. I got scared. Wow. So it also taught me a lesson of you don't know how many opportunities are going to come. You need to jump on it when one is presented to you.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true because one of the things I've talked about with Aljon over the years that we've been doing our podcast is that you don't know what the outcome is going to be unless you actually put yourself out there.
Yes.
If you don't ask the question, you're not going to, know what the answer is. And
right.
The worst thing that can happen is they say no.
Yeah.
But you're not going to know that because the best thing that can happen is somebody goes, oh yeah, we want to hire you in,
Yeah.
It's just, you have to put yourself out there and you can't be, you got to put the fear aside.
Yeah. Cause it's almost, in a way it almost is a no when you haven't asked. It's kind of a default no, until you do ask.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So who called you? Do you remember who called you and hired you?
It's been that was back in 94. Oof. That was a while ago. I remember meeting the recruiter and I knew his name for a while, and then he didn't stay at the studio that long. And I can't remember his name.
Jack wasn't Bill Matthews.
It wasn't Bill Matthews, who I remember, interacting with when I got at the studio. Younger guy with dark hair and light eyes. Kind of a thinner build. Oh
Yeah, I
gosh.
wanted to say Jack, but that doesn't ring a bell to you. Okay.
No.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know who it would have been.
Yeah.
It'll come to you at some point, right?
It will. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get the call. They want to hire you, and what happened next?
That's a big change in life. It sounds corny, but I do tell people, that was, I got hired and I couldn't believe they were going to send over like a contract over to my apartment, and it was so precious to me. I wanted to make sure it got there and made sure I signed it and got started. And then the first day on the lot was magical. And again, this sounds corny, but to me, it was not just my first day at Disney. I felt like it was the first day in my life I wasn't poor anymore. And I just loved it. And coming off of these hit movies, and there wasn't really Pixar wasn't Pixar yet.
Right.
DreamWorks was just starting, but nobody had heard of DreamWorks yet. You were unquestionably at the pinnacle of animation, no question about it. And gosh, it's hard to describe the excitement. Even, they were growing, so they hired a bunch of us young kids and they put us in buildings, they had to kind of find space.
Right.
And so even the building they put me in was a kind of Imagineering building, Imagineering,
right,
where they make the Disneyland attractions.
Yeah.
And I go in there to get my desk, and there's like the layout for the Indiana Jones ride. And I'm an enormous Indiana Jones fan. So it's like you're working at Disney, there's the Indiana Jones ride, all the artwork for it. It's hard to describe how happy I was and how life-changing that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you and you got a desk?
Yeah.
You remember the building you were in?
What did they call that building? It had the Figment Cafe in there. Gosh, and I visit it once in a while because I'm sentimental. Gosh, what was? You remember?
So it would have been. It wouldn't have been the Hart Dannon building. It was the Circle 7 building, wasn't it?
Right across the street from Circle 7.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't remember what they called that building, but I know the building you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's right over in Glendale. It was adjacent to the Imagineering campus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
And then I just got obsessed. I think I must have read 3 different biographies on Walt Disney. It's weird. Disney was always kind of on my radar. I grew up, though, really watching those Popeyes and the Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny. God, I love those Bugs Bunny cartoons. And Disney always, it was a dream, but it always felt like, boy, that's a big dream. I don't know if I could achieve that one. So there was a little bit of a holding it at arm's length until I got hired. And then once I got hired, I really embraced it. And I read 3 different biographies on Walt, and very, very inspired by his story and how, gosh, the enormous risks that guy would take. He's just made out of something different from most of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you settled in, what was the film you started working on, and what was your role?
Right. So I was a cleanup in-betweener on Pocahontas. And so, just imagine you'd seen, Little Mermaid, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Then, you saw Aladdin, saw Lion King, and now they're going to put in a video cassette. Okay, here's the movie we're working on. And you felt like I get to see Pocahontas before everybody else. Like it was such a treat just to watch the movie and see it in all that rough animation form, storyboard form. It was a work reel. And just so exciting. And then, you got to just be nice and make friends to everybody. So when I was doing my cleanup, I had no idea about thick and thin lines. I was just doing one clean line. And maybe that's why it took me 8 months to get hired. They probably hired the stronger cleanup artists first before they got down to me. And I saw this girl, Cindy Buhunovsky. I remember her name. And she had a beautiful thick and thin line. And I just said, hey, Cindy, boy, that line is beautiful. How do you get that tapered line? It's so wonderful. And then she would show me with the mechanical pencil how she would kind of build and build and build and build on it. It took forever, time consuming, but the line looked beautiful. And so I started doing that, and thank goodness I did it early enough, because they were casting us on what character you should be cleanup on.
Yeah.
And I must have been a good student for Cindy, because they cast me onto the Pocahontas character. And so I was just beside myself to be on the main character on this movie. A completely different life from just, 6 months earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And talk a little bit about your experience working on that film, and building those friendships, because that's what winds up happening. You obviously shared an office with somebody, or several people.
Yeah, eventually I would. As an in-betweener, I was in, a little cubicle in that new, yeah, that Imagineering building. But we
Yeah.
definitely, because we were all kind of like kids going off to college. Everybody's young and kind of getting together, so it was very easy to make friends, and everybody was just happy, like I was, and it was such a great creative era in the company, and we were all so happy, so easy to make friends. Um, and so I would work, and then I because like, again, good luck, bad luck in life, right? It was hard childhood, but it created a very strong work ethic in me, and I knew I wasn't going to let an opportunity pass by anymore.
Yeah.
So I would do my required work on Pocahontas all day long, which they kind of, that thick and thin line art, boy, you could do maybe a drawing an hour. So
Right.
you think about, you worked all day to do 8 drawings, but I would get my 8 drawings done, go eat dinner, and then I lived in a crummy apartment. I'm not in a hurry to go to my crummy apartment. I'd come back to the studio, and then I would work on my own rough animation, because I thought, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. The older artists, more experienced artists, were telling me, well, it's very common to get let go at the end of each movie, and then we're in cleanup.
Right.
You get let go, and then you'll wait till the next movie is ready, and if you're lucky, they call you back, but you got to find something to do. So I thought, boy, I don't know how long this is going to last for me. I'm going to take advantage of it. So I would do my own animation tests at night. Practically lived at that studio for that first year or two, because now I had mentors to show my work to. And I would, like I said, everybody was so friendly and nice and sharing with knowledge. That's kind of what I found to be these first few years of my Disney career. That was very like a Disney thing, passing on knowledge,
Yeah.
sharing. If there was any competition, it was all friendly competition. Nobody,
Yeah.
in my view, it never got contentious. If you were competitive, it was just like you fed off of each other. It was really wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I would animate things like, I love baseball. So like, oh, that's very physical. I'll have a guy hit a baseball and start running. And I had now mentors to show at the studio. And then before you knew it, I kind of grew and got promoted to now a rough in-betweener, right? Because there's cleanup and then there's rough. And then when you're rough in-betweener, now you get to work personally with an animator, and you really get to bend their ear. Now I was on Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I was working with Russ Edmonds, who became a tremendous mentor to me in my career.
Yeah.
And Russ was great. He saw that I had I love, Spielberg used this word and I love it. I'm not even Jewish, but I love you. Chutzpah. I showed some chutzpah.
Yeah.
And so Russ would say, okay, hey, I animated Phoebus walking, but it's very realistic. I just didn't do the dialogue. Why don't you, Rob? Why don't you put in the dialogue for me? And then he would coach me on it. And a great mentor-mentee relationship was born there. And now I was in the rough animation branch instead of being in cleanup.
Now, were you still doing sort of your own animation at night? Were you still working on
a little bit? Yeah, I have this guy Carman. It's almost embarrassing to say how long I've been animating Carman, because I've been animating it for 25, 30 years. Someone should expect something that makes their eyes melt, but it's just like, that's how long it takes when you're trying to have a career, and you can only sneak it in on boy, I admire any artist who can get anything done on the side, because it's just so labor intensive, time consuming. But yeah, I was kind of animating my own little things, and then I had to, once I learned another step, I go, oh my, well, I got to throw out all that Carman animation I did, because now I learned this. There are things like dialogue, like thank goodness for Russ Edmonds pushing me. I thought, boy, how do you do mouth shapes? How do you sync it? How do you know when a character talks out of the side of their mouth or pop? And so I thought, okay, Carman wears a helmet. I'm just going to animate him talk when the helmet's on, so I don't have to do any dialogue. But then because of Russ and helping with the dialogue, and now doing tests, and I realized, you know what? That's a weakness. I don't want to have a weakness. I don't want to have something that restricts what I can do. I am going to attack dialogue. I'm going to do dialogue test after dialogue test after I want to conquer it. And then when you conquer it, it's like maybe my favorite thing to animate now. It's so fun to make a character perform in such a way, a 2-part performance, because there's a vocal performance married with that drawing performance. So then the same thing happened with, any kind of overlapping animation, like a cape or long hair, you can't chart that movement. It has to be done straight ahead, and you got to be bold with it. And I was terrified of it. Okay, I don't want to be terrified of it anymore. I am going to do test after test after test with the cape, long hair, everything. I want to master it. And then when you do it, oh my, overlaps. One of the most fun things to animate. It adds texture to your movement, and it's fun. And so now, even when I design my own characters to animate, it has to have some kind of overlapping movement on it, because that makes it fun.
And I want our listeners to understand this. So, essentially you're animating the main action. You're creating the performance of your character. And once you have that, and you've got the director's buy-in or your supervising animator's buy-in to that main action, then you're going back in and you're doing another pass.
Yeah.
And this is where you're going to focus on the hair. You're going to focus on cloth, a cape, or whatever the character may be wearing. And that gets its own pass of animation done on it that is essentially reacting to the main action of the character, right?
Yeah, perfectly said.
Yeah. So, and that, a lot of people try. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of animators who start out initially, learning, they're trying to do all of that stuff at the same time, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's sort of the big mistake.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really about blocking in your animation performance first. Getting that down and flowing nicely before you add in that secondary animation.
Yeah.
So
you see the fun it has. Even, I look at when I go on the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction at Disneyland, how great, when they added the Johnny Depp, the Jack Sparrow character, and he has long hair. So now you have a robot that can only do this, like it's peeking behind.
Yeah.
But now that linear movement, that's not that exciting, now has him looking, and then the hair overlaps and settles, comes back, and it does it again, and it adds more texture and life to that movement.
Absolutely. I'm curious to get your viewpoint when you started working on Pocahontas. Were you, and I was like this when I first started out, I just was at my desk, having a ball doing all these drawings.
Yeah.
Were you sort of in that same mindset, or were you sort of trying to get out there and meet people?
Gosh, I guess it's a combo. Because I just spent so much hours to cover trying to be able to do both.
Yeah.
But I did see, Dave, you bring up something that's really important for kids that are, in their early 20s, have this opportunity. And again, I think because I had a little bit of a, like you said, hunger. And I was watching, I could not believe my eyes when Pocahontas wrapped up. Normally we would have been laid off, but I get luck. DreamWorks had just started and was taking a lot of the artists away. And I think this put a little bit of fear in Disney that if we let go of these kids, DreamWorks is going to scoop them up. So I had a couple of months after Pocahontas where they weren't ready for me on Hunchback yet. And normally I would have gotten laid off, but Disney held on to us. So a lot of us kids, and I just looked around, I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm getting paid and staying at Disney, and I'm not, doing anything production-wise. I say production-wise, I was still working. I did see a lot of my colleagues that were maybe a little bit better off than I and got to go to CalArts and maybe didn't have the same hunger I have. They were screwing around and they were playing and they were goofing off. And even at that age, I knew, no, that's not the way I'm going to do it. And I was going to work at 8 a.m, and I was working on these animation tests even during that time. It's also a very nurturing era for Disney. They were encouraging us, they were having guest speakers come in and lecturers come in and teach us this art of animation.
They were training. They were continuing the training during those down periods where you didn't really have the production work, but you were still learning. You were still doing tests if you wanted to. Like you said, some people were just off goofing around.
Yeah. And they were showing us, clips of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin that I probably wasn't really watching on my own. And not only showing it, informing us, like, well, here's what you can learn from watching these clips. It was a great, for someone who couldn't go to one of these great schools, I was now kind of being schooled in a really wonderful way.
But when you say that, do you look back and feel like you may have gotten a better education from learning sort of in the trenches? Like you got thrown in
Yeah.
the deep end, so to speak, and didn't have to spend all this money to get a degree?
It did work out. I did have friends that kind of, when we became close and they knew my story, they did say, Rob, you're lucky. I'm still paying off my student loans, so
Right.
I got lucky. I am very fortunate that it worked out the way it did.
Did you I mean, did it bother you at all when you were first starting out that you didn't go to a good school? You
Well,
didn't have that on your resume?
yeah, maybe the resume was a little bit of a concern. I could already see getting in that it was ability. There is the social aspect. I did see, look, we're human beings. And I would see CalArts folks would kind of, look out for each other. And I was kind of out of that loop. So that, that wasn't great. It was never, ever mean. Never. It was just that they had bonded by that experience together.
They were friends from school, so naturally there was a camaraderie coming into the studio environment.
Yeah. Never mean spirited at all, but definitely you could feel like you're not in that inner circle. Yeah.
Did but from the standpoint of taking the classes at the union, you were really getting as good of an education anyway. And as you pointed out, it has nothing to do with a degree.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with the talent.
Yeah, that's right. And I was learning the very practical, what you need to know to do the job. And it was kind of abbreviated, but that was fine because you were only learning what you needed to know. And it was very, very fantastic. It was great to now then go be at the studio and then reconnect with Ruben Aquino. And I'm sure Ruben didn't remember that I was one of his students, but I got to tell him, hey, Ruben, you lent a hand. You helped me learn this stuff to get in here. And we've stayed friends forever. I think, Dave, you and I didn't get to interact that much back then, just when you're different departments.
Exactly.
But the people that we bonded with, boy, it's still like 30 years later, what a special bond we all have together. And if there's ever an occasion that we can reunite, like John Musker did a short film, a year or two ago, we all kind of get together like a family, and our conversations pick up right where they left off. And I wish that for anybody in their lives, that they could find that special group that's like that.
Yeah, and something, I think, what's interesting, you brought up John Musker and the short that he did, Hip. It's so nice to be able to get together, in a theater and celebrate somebody's success, like John's, for him completing a short, or Andreas with Musha. And I think that we're getting into this environment where there's a lot of people that are starting to do independent shorts. I mean, you look at Aaron Blaze's Snow Bear, being shown all over the world and, winning accolades at all these festivals and stuff like that. It's just great to be able to root for people, and to get together, like you said, that camaraderie of people getting pulled together to celebrate somebody, or to just get together and see a film together.
Yeah, because we all just had that in common, huh? We just love that stuff so much.
Yeah. So now, you have downtime after Pocahontas, and you were still training. What when you started working on Hunchback, tell our listeners about that experience.
Yeah, and then at that time they were building the they had just opened the brand new Hats building. It got nicknamed. Where Disney Animation in Walt Disney's era was on the main lot. It kind of got, in the Eisner era, got pushed into these kind of warehouses.
I'm going to stop you there because I always interject when people try to soften it. We got kicked off the studio lot to some warehouses in Glendale. Let's call it like it is.
Yeah, it must have been painful because I love the history of the company. I'm always going into that old animation building, and I can only imagine the pain of getting kicked out of there. And then in my era, they were kind of the makeup because of the big giant Renaissance. They made that brand new building, and everybody wanted to be in there. I certainly wanted to be out of the Glendale warehouses.
Yeah.
And so on Hunchback, I think when I started on Hunchback, I was still in the warehouses, but at some point I finally got my cubicle in the main hat building, and now I'm in the mecca of animation. Everybody was there, and it was great. And that was definitely nicer than my apartment. So I was still doing that thing where I was working all day, going home to eat dinner, and then coming back and working on my own stuff at night in my cubicle and showing. Now I had Russ Edmonds to show. Tim Allen comes to mind. Tim Allen was looking at stuff of mine. It's just so many great mentors.
And we're talking Tim Allen, the animator, not Tim Allen, the actor.
Yeah, it's good to distinguish that. Yeah.
It's interesting. I actually started my career in the original animation building on the main lot. So I was one of those artists that got kicked out over to Glendale. But something, I think at the time people were a little upset by it, but in hindsight, it was really one of the things that I think contributed to that renaissance of Disney animation, and sort of not being under the microscope, of being on the main lot and being off in these warehouses and being able to create these films like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King, which were all done in these nondescript little warehouse buildings.
Yeah, there is something to be said about that for sure. I'm glad you kind of verbalized what I kind of had guessed was going on. I think it was kind of good to be away from the suits and create. Yeah,
exactly. So what were you doing on Hunchback?
So I was now rough in betweener and assigned with Russ Edmonds, and we were working on Phoebus, which we were excited about. The first, I think, Disney male that had facial hair. So that was our groundbreaking thing. And boy, Russ is just a phenomenal animator, phenomenal guy, was always so giving with his time. And now I got to work with the whole team, but Russ was really so good and could delegate work. Like to this day, when I animate, I can't really chart and hand it out. I kind of in between retime as I go. It's a whole little process. Russ was so good at it. He knew what he could chart and then move on to the next thing. So I would get the lion's share of working just with Russ. And so it built that kind of close relationship with him. And then
and he was still feeding you animation because you're doing the rough in betweening, right?
Yeah.
And he's giving you bits of animation to do. When did he actually start giving you a scene or two here and there, like, hey, why don't you animate this?
It never got that big. It was usually just Phoebus would have kind of through his rough animation. Phoebus would just have his stock jaw is shut, and he'd say, "Oh, go in there and kneaded gum eraser and erase that and give me the up and down and the mouth shapes." And then Phoebus wore a cape. There'd be times where I left the cape off of Phoebus. Rob, I want you to add the cape on.
Okay.
So it's little things like that, kind of bringing me along a little slowly. But then I would take, Disney was another great thing about Disney. They get these incredible voice talent, and Kevin Kline was pretty hot at the time when they got him. And so now I grabbed all this dialogue from A Fish Called Wanda of Kevin Kline lines, and I was animating Phoebus to these these lines from that, and then showing Russ to get feedback on them. Yeah.
That must have been fun to do, to take dialogue from a live action movie.
Yeah, super fun. And then learning even how to break down the track. You had to learn how to fill out your X sheet where all the vocalizations were going on what frame. So it was really, but I didn't have a family back then. It was just me and my apartment, and I had all this time, and I loved it. And I think everybody in the building loved it. We just all fed off of each other.
Yeah. When you were working on Hunchback, did you get any sense of the film being a dark film? Because I always look at Hunchback as being kind of a darker movie from that period.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely felt it. I was wondering, is this the best thing for Disney to be doing? I did question it a little bit, even though I loved it, and I felt like we were going to all pull it off. But it was very dark. And then you had the Britzy brothers who were working in Paris that were boarding sequences, and then we'd see them here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, they were dramatic and light and shadow and contrast and bold. And I think that that sequence in the beginning they did. The Hellfire sequence they boarded, and I guess they're twin brothers that worked really well. One could draw characters, one could draw layouts, and they were like a machine together. And when you saw that in the dailies, these really bold, kind of charcoaly, black and white imagery, you were like, wow, this is really dark. But we were loving it because we could do something dramatic.
Yeah.
And then I could tell, even though I was really low on the totem pole and not privy to meetings, it was very, very late in the game when they added that gargoyle song. And that song is right after, I think, Paris Burns or something. You could tell, okay, that's the studio. They had to lighten it up because we got really dark here.
Yeah, a lot of children crying in the theater.
Right. Yeah.
So at what point did you start to feel your sort of confidences in being an animator yourself?
Yeah, building up these relationships. And then the studio was still, Lion King was kind of the zenith of that time, and then Pocahontas made a little bit less, Hunchback made a little bit less, but there was still the energy. There was still the energy and the belief that we can have hits, and we were releasing them at summer against big movies, or maybe the winter release against big movies. There was that confidence within the studio, and so there was still opportunity, and they were letting us know, okay, well, by Hercules, the animation staff needs to grow, so there's going to be opportunities. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how long this dream is going to last. I've never gotten a title of a degree. Like you said, it's not important, but I never had been knighted a title. And I thought before this, I didn't even know about CG yet, but I thought, how long can these hits last before it ends? If I could have that title of a Disney animator, I would really feel like I earned something. So I already kind of had my foot down to the pedal, but I found another gear. And I was working so hard and just trying to show that I want one of those animator opportunities. And through all of the course of doing all those tests of Kevin Kline dialogue and baseball players, I had now had stuff to submit that maybe my colleagues that weren't taking the bull by the horns did not have. And I was very fortunate to get one of those spots where you became a trainee animator or mentee, and they gave you a 1 year on the movie where you had one-on-one with your mentor. You had production scenes. You were going to animate stuff that were production, but also you were going to get tests, because your production scenes on Hercules, I'd get when Hercules is tiny on screen. And how do you show that to get a promotion? So on top of that, I had to do tests that were maybe dialogue, close-ups. And so Randy Haycock was my mentor on Young Hercules. And so now I'm doing all of that work, whatever Randy gives me. And then I'm also in my off hours fitting in tests, and I would take dialogue from my favorite movies. Like I took some dialogue from Christopher Reeve from Superman and animated adult Herc to it. And I took Mark Hamill from Star Wars. Like, I was going to go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters and animated, young Herc to that. And so these are things so you're in this mentee apprenticeship for a year, and it's kind of sink or swim. They would check in with you every 3 months, and you got nervous because you could get dropped.
Wow.
You could get promoted, or they could say keep going. And I luckily I just got the keep going for the whole. It took me. I didn't get promoted early. It took me the year, and then got promoted to animator at the end of that production.
And so you finished Hercules before you got bumped to animator.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is probably a good place for us to break, because I think when we come back next week, I want to talk about that first animator role you got.
Yeah.
Okay?
It had some drama. There's some
ups
and downs to
I
it.
want to hear all about that.
Yeah.
So until next week, Rob, thank you for being on the Skull Rock podcast, and I look forward to picking up the conversation next Monday.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Me too.
Let's get out of here!
Come on, Scotty, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here!
Let's get out of here, Lieutenant.
All right, Dave, part 1 in the bag right now.
Really terrific. And I hope people who are in the industry really listen to this one, because there's a lot of great information that Rob imparts. And also, just the fact that having that enthusiasm and that positive energy, and he's out doing his own thing, and that in and of itself feeds on itself. And you do a little short and put it out onto social media, and you're going to get the attention of people, and then somebody may reach out to you and say, hey, I'm doing this other thing over here, you want to help us out on this? I just think it's just a really inspiring conversation with him.
Good stuff. Well, we look forward to the next part of this discussion next week as we once again leave him in the green room to talk more about his life and his work. Well, once again, gang, thank you so much. If you love, once again, pop culture and Disney, we encourage you to please subscribe to the show everywhere you find your podcasts. We're out there also on our fledgling YouTube channel. Yes, we've got all kinds of little clips there for you to enjoy, as well as videos from Dave as he shares some anecdotes and some interviews. In fact, we have a video version of this that's going to be up this week as well. So please subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us those comments. Follow us on all the social media platforms. We appreciate it as well. Links in the show notes. You can also check me out, Aljon Go, on Instagram. We would appreciate it. Big shout out to our friends at Source Radio at srsounds.com, and also follow my other podcast. It is Dining at Disney. Every single week we have new content for you, and my wife shares great videos and travel tips for you there. diningatdisney.com. Dave?
Well, Aljon, I'm going to keep beating the bush about this. We're going to be at the Animation Y'all Expo in Nashville, April 10th to the 12th. We're going to have some special guests signing books. We're just going to be having a grand old time. And folks, if you've not been to the Animation Y'all Expo, you got to do it. If you're in the central part of the country, the East Coast, make your way to Nashville, April 10th to 12th. It is going to be a great weekend. Andreas Deja is going to be there. Aaron Blaze is going to be there. There's a ton of animation professionals. My buddy Matt O'Callahan is going to be there. There's just so many people. The Bancroft brothers are putting this on. This is really a huge animation gathering in the central part of the country, Aljon. And as you know, Nashville is a wonderful city. We're looking forward to coming back. Aljon and I will be together again in the same room for the second time, because we did this last year. So folks, if you haven't gotten your tickets, or if you haven't made plans, make the plans to go to the Animation Y'all Expo. You will not be disappointed. By the way, 40th anniversary of An American Tale from Don Bluth. John Pomeroy is going to be doing a special panel discussion on that. So really, check it out. Go online to the Animation Y'all website. Aljon's putting the link in the show notes. Get your tickets, and we hope we see you there. Also, you can hear me monthly on the Tunes Behind the Tunes on SiriusXM Disney Hits, channel 133. All during February, we're featuring the song Try Everything from Disney's original animated hit, the first one, Zootopia. So check that out. And then, if you feel like it, go to theoldmillpress.com. You get author-signed copies of many of my books, as well as author-signed copies of the newly released The Art of John Canemaker, An Animator's Garden by John Canemaker, who's just a fantastic individual, great animation historian and author. You can also get A Spoonful of Sugar, the story of the Upjohn Pharmacy in Disneyland by Stephen Hall, all author-signed. And while you're out there surfing on the internet, go to davidbossert.com. There's a whole bunch of free content there. You can read articles I've written about animation if you're interested. There's also free stuff to send away for. So you got a whole week's worth of stuff to do there, folks. So go out, have a fantastic week, everybody, and we'll see you back here next Monday right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.